Hello and welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Rajni Bharara, your host. And today, before I talk about anything else, I would like to read out the very important disclaimer, which we display on our screens before the show. So, by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. All right, after this very important disclaimer, welcome back everyone. I'm Rajni Bharara, your host, and today we are tackling a very hot topic that could reshape the future for thousands of foreign professionals. H-1B visa updates 2025. What do they mean for you and how can you adapt? Well, joining us is none other than Ruby Powers, a powerhouse in immigration law and founder of Powers Law Group. With years of experience helping individuals and business navigate the complexities of US immigration, Ruby is here to break down the changes, share insider insights, and answer the big question: how can you stay ahead in this ever changing landscape? So, whether you're an H-1B holder, a hopeful applicant, or an employer trying to make sense with all of it, this episode is packed with tips and strategies you can't afford to miss. So, without any further ado, let's give a very warm welcome to Ruby. And yes, welcome her to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show for the second time. Hi, Ruby. Welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show for the second time. Happy to have you back.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here and help answer questions and be a resource for everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And now, Ruby, without any further ado, we have so many updates coming and going, especially regarding H-1B. So people are really excited and nervous at the same time. Sometimes, the big names, the politicians and the business people, they are backing H-1B, and sometimes they are not backing H-1B visa. So, a lot has been going on when it comes to H-1B visa. So I would like to know from you that what are the key changes in the H-1B visa renewal process starting January 17th, 2025?
Well, there's been a lot going on because, as everyone probably knows, we have a new president who was previously a president, Donald Trump, and we had the inauguration just days ago, and so now the immigration in the news space has been flooded with a lot of changes. There haven't been a lot in the H-1B space other than the H-1B rule that was announced that would go into effect on January 17th, which was to further streamline and the modernization final rule to improve program integrity and efficiency that was going to go into effect by January 17th of this year. That was put under place under Biden. What is in the news a lot, which just looking at it right now, is this going back and forth between Elon Musk and it's Vivek Ramaswamy and the whole Department of Government Efficiency about something about regarding H-1Bs and things like that. So there is a lot of talk because it has been confusing leading up to this moment as we're in cap season, H-1B season right now, about to start. And this is a time when you think about it, you talk about it, and you get screened. What will this administration do differently, if anything at all, on H-1Bs? I do have some information just generally that I can share about the H-1B process, and just to make sure we have some good background, if that's okay, and then we can go into taking in some questions. But let me go ahead and share some information. So in terms of updates and what people need to know, a little bit about myself. I'm board certified in immigration here in Texas, and it is federal, so we can help individuals all around the world on U.S. immigration matters. And the firm is Powers Law Group. It's 15 years old. And I've been practicing 16 plus years. So the H-1B is well known, I think, by our audience here as a non-immigrant visa that allows U.S. employers to temporarily hire foreign workers in a specialty occupation. And usually what we're seeing is in IT, engineering, healthcare, academia. and it's a really great place for skilled workers. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough visas allocated for this for the demand. And you know what the process was before, and this is one thing that Trump put into place in his first administration. Remember how it used to be that everybody who was applying had to prepare the entire packet, FedEx it, and for that April 1 arrival, flooding the USCIS locations, and then they would then take those and do their lottery system. But one thing under the Trump administration was to create the registration process where before you did all of that, yes, you need to double check that you're eligible, but what they would do is you would go on the USCIS website, registration, and then they would randomize. There was an opening of about a 3-week period in March, and then you would have that randomization and be able to see who's got chosen. Then you would prepare and submit. So this saved a lot of legal fees for companies, individuals, and things like that. And so I really do think that that was a great suggestion to streamline the process. But then over time, they called like people gaming the system and applying from multiple people and trying to get more chances. And then they were cracking down on that later in 2024 by some of the innovation and efficiencies that they put in place. But in general, you either have a bachelor's degree or higher in a specific field. You can use equivalent experience, but for the most part, we're working with the bachelor's or master's or beyond. And the job offer is in a specialty occupation requiring the applicant's skills. They have to demonstrate that they need this, the foreign talent. And so just some of the things to know, there's 65,000 H-1B visas annually. And what we're talking about are the cap. The cap is where there's a limitation. There are exemptions to the cap where there's not the same limitation when we're talking about universities and affiliated nonprofits and government and research organizations that qualify for being cap exempt. And back to the annual cap numbers, additional 20,000 for individuals with advanced U.S. degrees. And so that does put a priority on those with, like, mostly we're talking masters from the U.S. That helps with the U.S. schools, but generally people might be here with their F1, they get their OPT. If they don't get picked up for their H-1B, and they're in the STEM, they have some more years. And so there's been like an opportunity there to help them. Often what I find is even though you can do consular processing, that most times it's the employer knows the potential employee and has worked with them in some capacity in OPT or some other visa status and is willing to, because of that, willing to petition for them. So we in 2024, according to this, they received 758,994 applications. I think that's registration actually, but there's a lot of demand. And so that's the other thing that there's been talk about is why can't we increase those numbers? And basically it's a political issue too, because there's just that concern that you're not taking jobs away from U.S. workers. But a lot of statistics and research show that there's not enough U.S. workers to do these jobs. And by bringing in foreign skilled talent, we're infusing a lot of ingenuity and just creativity and just, I don't know, I'm thinking of synonyms for like the amazingness, let's just say, and that later on can turn into other opportunities because they're making great strides here in the U.S. And what's great about the H-1B is that it is a nice pathway can be a nice pathway with it being a dual intent for perm sponsorship. And so anyway, there's the process. And just one other change that did happen was because of that final rule that went into effect on January 17th. There's a new I-129 that came out like the same day, and so that's a new thing. H-1Bs, you can get them usually around up to 3 years at a time, but the 6 years, and then you can get the 1 year extensions while your perm is pending. And the prevailing wage requirement is critical, and that changes over time with Department of Labor and where the person will be working and based off of experience. And this is how they make sure that they're protecting the domestic job market, and also the potential employee and beneficiary to make sure that they're paid that prevailing wage. One other thing about the H-1B, which I think a lot of people know, is that H-4 is for the spouses and under married children under 21. There is a small carve out for giving work authorization for H-4 spouses if there's a perm pending. That had been going in and out of availability over the years. I hope that remains, because for some individuals with a long time visa wait, then this makes life a lot better, while the spouses are waiting for the green card to be available, especially for Indian nationals when the visa wait time can be quite long. And because otherwise the spouse would need to would need to get on another visa. And the other thing we always have to remember is, while that visa wait time is pending, watching out for the children and what visa can we move them over to. So like we said, there's a lot of political changes going on right now. And a part of the base in which the Trump administration, or Trump, his candidacy, was really trying to protect U.S. workers. I think that there's a section that are using the H-1B that are not part of his base that would be at risk. But I think just the concept can be very politicized. I'll just say it like that. I don't know. I don't want to go into the nitty gritty, but I think that's why we're seeing a lot of headlines right now where there's a little bit of some confusion as to, is he pro H-1B or not? And it sounds as if he has been, but then it's been really confusing, honestly. And so anyway, a lot of big name companies have been stepping up for H-1Bs, just like they had for DACA, for example, and saying, hey, we need this. We need more of this. We need to stay relevant and stay competitive for us to be able to keep these jobs here in the United States. And so that's a lot of part of this conversation. There were so many other changes, executive orders that happened in the last few days that even though we are gearing up for H-1B season, so this is timely, I feel like this is just one of many things that are going on right now to sort of see if he's going to have any substantial changes other than what has been happening under the last year or so under Biden and the improvements. So he has said that he wanted the need for the skilled individuals, and supports the personal. He knows about the program. I think he's had employees within the program. We need the best people in the field. Apparently, he said that. But in terms of expanding it, I think I'm not sure what he's going to do. There's a lot of supporters, like Elon Musk, who's a part of his Doge. Is that the Department of Government Efficiency or something like that? I'm still memorizing all these new things from this week. But and then there's others who are not as are critics of the program. But anyway, a lot of big name companies have used a lot of H-1B, a lot of employees through the H-1B process, and are definitely strong supporters of it. I think it says a lot that with Elon Musk in his Trump's ear, that who's a big strong proponent of H-1Bs, and we'll continue to see what will happen. But right now, there's the 85,000 visas available, and 20,000 are going to the advanced degree holders, which really is not enough. Like when the economy is strong, when there's labor shortage, I mean, these numbers go by so fast. When we before the registration process, and you flew all your cases there by that April 1 date, usually they would stop accepting them within like 2 days or something like that, maybe 3 days, because they knew that they already hit the numbers and that within that they were going to do their lottery. So I think when you look over time, when historically economy is strong, labor market is tight, these go by really fast. And anyway, well, we know the importance of it. They contribute to the economy, that innovation, and it does provide a lot of options because individuals can have a pathway to, usually it's like the foot in the door. Maybe they were already here on their F1, then they get the OPT. The company likes them, they do the H-1B. It gives them an opportunity to get that experience, build their resume. And then the traditional path is to be sponsored by the company. But, if there is a timeline to get that done because the H-1B visa is available only for 6 years. So you want to get that perm going usually within a couple of years. That usually works if you move quickly. Other than that, depending on your nationality, you might want to try to move to another visa, or you build up your resume and try to be a national interest waiver candidate of some sort. Or depending on your spouse's nationality and eligibility, you might be able to get on some other type of visa. But lots of, global collaboration, lots of options. And there's been different talk. We don't know. Removing caps for U.S. educated international students, simplifying that transition from H-1B to permanent residency would be great. Streamlining processes to encourage top talent to stay without being so bureaucratic and confusing. But honestly, there's been so much change this last couple of days. I don't know when we're going to get to this conversation, but it's probably going to be hot because we're going into H-1B season. So what will some of the changes be? We're not sure, but I think that other issue that was clarified recently was making it easier for the OPT, so F1 OPT, H-1B, and that whole gap, clarifying that, streamlining that. And then, that was awesome when there was given more time for OPT for STEM degrees. That gave people more of a chance, bite at the apple, the H-1B registration. And so it's hot. It's prevalent right now. This is timely. And other than it being in the news and the January 17th rule and some of the other changes from 2024, with the fact of how that needing to show your passport when you do the registration to minimize the amount of multiple registrations per person beneficiary. Those are like sort of the hot changes that have been happening in the last year. So this is a little bit about my information, and we'll go ahead and open up to questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ruby, for explaining everything in so much detail, for pointing out all the changes that has been happening with the H-1B visa. So that was very detailed and very insightful. Thank you so much for making the efforts, on creating the presentation. It means a lot. Thank you so much for that. But now I would like to move to my next question after this. So Ruby, with this, I know that you have explained each and everything in so much detail, but still I would like to ask you a question before I move into the viewers' question, because I know the viewers are also waiting to get an answer from you. And guys, if you directly want to give a call, so you can also give us a call on the number 425-436-6335. I would like to repeat it, 425-436-6335. You can put the access code 988888. Yes. We'll put you through and you can directly ask your question to Ruby, through call. So, but right now, Ruby, I would like to come to you and ask you that now, can all H-1B visa holders now renew their visas domestically, or are there specific eligibility requirements?
Oh, okay. Well, if you could, if the individual is here in the United States, you can do that. And there's a lot of different considerations about if you're planning to travel and with your stamp and things like that when you're coming back in. But you can transit. You can do an extension while you're here in the country. One of the other things that happens with this is that one thing that happened a lot under the Trump administration, and just thinking about consulate right now, is that there were a lot of resignations and there was a lot of change. And then they had a hard time filling some of those roles. And so then things just got slower and a little more difficult. And one of the other things that I remember during that first administration was, and I'm just sort of talking in general, so I'm just sort of putting that thing in perspective. So when you're deciding whether you want to do an extension here or, abroad, but I would definitely, if you're here, and I would do it here. And you can also take advantage of premium processing if you need it or things like that. But the other thing that happened is that there was this sort of, even if you had been approved before at the consulate, they were reviewing under Trump first administration, reviewing things de novo, like looking at it with fresh eyes as if it had never been approved before. And one of the first changes that Biden put in place to basically honor the fact that it had already been reviewed and approved was to give a lot more credence to a prior approved petition and not look at it with fresh new eyes, assuming that it was a brand new case, and sort of giving it the deference of it being approved before. And so I'm bringing that up because there's going to be a few things that are going to happen. Like with the change in administration, it just happened on Monday, and we are going to see. I remember when with Biden, it took about 6 months or so to really feel like he had made his administration change footprint and on the and on immigration. And so I think we're going to concede that. But right now, a lot of new cabinet members are getting into office, or being confirmed and everything. And then they're changing their leadership. They're changing the marching orders of what they're going to do. And so that's why a lot of this there's going to be a lot of moving parts, more than a typical year. And so I think even though there's lots of questions and I love being able to help give some general ideas, I think that nothing takes the place of just having a good old consultation and with an immigration attorney. And maybe if you have a company that is sponsoring and doing all of the the process, but you want to have an attorney that just is helping you know what your options are, then that's also like what we do as well, or that's an option that you can have. You don't have to just ask the attorney that your company has. You can ask another one just for like a second opinion to know what your options are. So anyway, I went a little bit over there, but I wanted to explain that a little bit for you because there's a lot of different moving parts. And one little policy, even though there's probably only going to be one law that's going to be passed anytime soon that's regarding immigration, and that's the Laken Riley bill act about the some criminal matters that even if you're arrested could have you detained. But what I'm getting at is that for the most part, we haven't had immigration laws in many years, but what we have had is policy interpretations or rule changes. And so when there's a lot of these changes that are announced, like about 80 executive orders were with the word returned or rejected or reversed. I think it was reversed of Biden and Trump on the first day on Monday. But when you think about all the changes that are being proposed, you have to think about where is the source of power or where is the source of law that the things we assume or that we know come from. And sometimes it could be, like I said, a rule, a policy. It could be an interpretation from like USCIS, for example. And after a while, they're like, we may have a new interpretation of it. And they create a memo and they say, this is our new interpretation of it. And so maybe that's a little too nerdy about it. But like right now, that's sort of how immigration works. And so when you ask questions and when there's a constant change, us immigration attorneys have to evaluate these things when we're answering those questions. And with a lot of moving parts, I am starting to liken this to playing 5D chess. I don't know if that's a thing, but it's sort of like what we know, what could potentially happen, and what could change. Anyway, so but this isn't going to be that complicated as 5D as like some other areas of immigration right now.
Right. So, but a lot of things has been happening when it comes to immigration. Since the time President Trump has taken the office, he has signed executive orders and ended birthright citizenship. The courts have also challenged it, and then the mass deportation has already begun, and so many things, and the ban on CBP app. So I mean, there's a lot to actually talk about, and then these changes in H-1B visas, and then sometimes they are backing it, they are in favor of it, then sometimes they're going against it. So a lot has been happening. So what do you think? Do you think it's more than you know they are what they're trying to do is they are actually it is more of a political move than what they're trying to do?
Well, I think that one of the things to note is that okay, that's probably where I saw the 5D chess was on Star Trek. Thanks for putting but I've been using it this week in media because I that's why I feel like my brain is like hurting already. um, okay, this is the way I approach this right now.
Uh-huh.
There's the political motives, and unfortunately, immigration has been politicized. But ultimately, life must go on. Immigration impacts so many different aspects of the U.S., from the
Yeah.
economy to the movement of people to the food that we eat, to our culture and innovation. We're in this whole AI revolution and everything in the tech space as well. And so I think on the political side, the way that our president is part of his base, that part of his campaigning is to stoke fear amongst immigrants, and unfortunately, and so I think a lot of that is through the expedited removal expansion, the mass deportation talk, the getting rid of the CBP one, making asylum harder, the Lincoln Riley Act, which is, in theory, it sounds good, but when you realize it, a person who's just arrested could be mandatory detained, even though they haven't had their chance to defend themselves and clear their name. And so that's contrary to what we normally do. And even ICE has said that we're not going to be able to implement this because we do not have the resources. But anyway, so one of the things I've said is that we have to evaluate what really can happen and where are the priorities. I think the priorities really are a lot about border and deportation, and the crimes. I think that he may have swayed back and forth about H-1B, but I think ultimately he knows it's important for business and companies, and I think for the most part he'll stay a little bit out of it, but it is getting a lot of headlines right now, especially with Elon Musk and such, who is a strong supporter of it, and a lot of other big companies. So I think for the most part, it's not going to be changed that much. And plus, there's not a lot of time to make a lot of change. Like, it's January 24th. Registration should start in early March. It should only open for a few weeks. We already had, rules take time to be put in place. There's a comment period, there's the posting, and then you have to give people advance notice about it. So I think for the most part, whatever was done under Biden in the last year is probably what's going to stay forward. For this next season, it could be like the following H-1B season that we see a little more change. But for the most part, I think it's relatively safe. But like I was saying, like, you have to look to see where's the source of power, and how long and how quickly could one person, or could he make a change to it? Or would it require Congress to act, which is going to be a little bit easier because there's a lot more consistency on the Republican side and numbers there. But that's probably only going to be for maybe 2 years. And then the pendulum will swing again, and so forth. So yeah, those are some behind the scenes type of thoughts about it. But I think, some of the things that we remember under the Trump administration were, he made that registration process. He made it a little bit harder for F1 students, and there was a lot less students. And you know what? F1s, they're the pipeline for H-1B. My
Mm-hmm.
there, and so I don't know. I don't think there's been a lot of talk about like reducing that, but it could be that target certain nationalities that they target reducing F1 for, but that really hurts the schools because of the
Like,
international.
if you
Yeah.
can give some example, nationality like which all what all countries?
Well, it could be like Chinese or something like that, or certain countries that like he might be like retaliating against for political reasons or something like that, or
Right.
security reasons. But I don't honestly. I really try to stay in my immigration lane, but it looks like I need to go up like 30,000 foot high level and see like a whole lot of big picture. But even with immigration, we're still full service law firm. So, I mean, I'm thinking about asylum and complex citizenship and family based on a regular basis. But yeah, I think yeah. So I don't know if he's actually said anything about F1s, but I was just giving, I mean, a student. But what I have said is that what I was mentioning that was is that that was something he did before. He made it a little bit more stringent because, okay, where do F1s come from? Usually the consulate. If you make it
Yeah.
difficult at the consulate, which like if there's more scrutiny, less discretion, less staff,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the policy is, less reviewability. There was a Supreme Court case last June that gave a lot more power to consular review. And so if that's that pipeline, so at the consulate is where all the F1s pretty much were coming in. And then for the most part, you could do a change of status. And then the F1s usually turn into OPT and then they turn into H-1B for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
One other good thing that happened, and I think that was pretty much only under Biden, was that you could do a change of status to an F1 and pay the premium processing. I remember how you used to have to wait a whole like year and a half for them to adjudicate the change of status before you could start school. That was so stupid. And then, and that's another thing that Trump did under Trump 1.0 is that he got rid of premium processing for so many things, which was really unfortunate for USCIS because USCIS, that's extra money. Like you do something faster, you get more money, and that helps the USCIS be more efficient. But also, it makes it more difficult for companies and individuals if you don't have premium processing. And so that was one thing. If you paid attention to that under Biden, having more premium processing for even national interest waivers, student change of status, and things like that. Anyway, I guess I'm going on a little bit of a rant there, but giving a little bit of a history lesson of things and keeping in mind what might potentially happen. So
No, I think that's necessary and that's very important. You know what you're saying. You have to inform the immigrants, especially because they are expecting a lot of things. But Ruby, before I take from the viewers, but before I take that, I also would like to know from you that before we already have seen administration, and now that he was coming to power for the second time, I know we were expecting a lot. But then, as an immigration attorney, were you expecting,
hmm.
all of this to come on the first day itself?
Well, we had heard rumors that there was going to be a whole bunch of actions on day one. So, I mean, I sort of lost count on the number. I heard like 150 or I don't know, 200, I don't know, whatever. But, the one thing to note, it's like there's more to the US than just immigration. Like, I'm thinking his presidency, like there's other areas of law and life, but I feel like he just really wants to focus on this one. But anyway, I I think we had heard rumors. We knew, I think, as the day was getting closer from him winning the election to January 20th, we were like getting more things were getting leaked out and more was coming out. A lot of that first focus in November was really in early December was to try to get a whole bunch of things filed and take care of things that we knew would probably not be run smoothly under the Trump administration. So that's where our focus was. And then as we were leading up, we were thinking a little bit more. But honestly, it does feel like it's like drinking from a fire hose right now. We had a little snow day here in Houston for like 2 days, and so there was the inauguration. There was a snow day on Tuesday and Wednesday. We all had to stay home to be safe, and then Thursday, yesterday, I was just like, it's hitting me now. It's really hitting me because it was like there's like this game like whack-a-mole. You're like trying to hit the thing or something. I feel like it's a little bit like that because there's this CBP one, no vaccine needed for COVID vaccine for 45. There's the I don't know, just all the different things, the mess, the talk about the law enforcement being at schools, places of worship, and hospitals. People are getting concerned about that. Just so many different things. Oh, getting rid of that. The Nicaraguan, Cuban, Haitian, Venezuelan parole program. So honestly, what I was telling my staff is a lot of these things are sort of like you maybe get 2 a week or 1 a week of these things, but to get a deluge of all of them on a 2 or 3 day period, it's like that going back to the 5D chess, or it's a huge paradigm shift. And so right now we're trying to evaluate all what does that mean for our existing clients and how we can best give them advice for the future.
Okay. Thank you so much again for taking that up and answering the question, Ruby. Now, I would like to quickly shift my focus to the viewers' question because they've been waiting in line for a long time. So let me quickly read out the questions. So MBB is here, and MBB says, I'm sure the USA will lose hugely the talented students from all over the world, especially from India with Trump's executive order, and huge gain for India as brain drain will be arrested. USA's loss is India's gain. And I think it's like a statement that this person is making. And also goes on to say that on the other hand, the USA will become, I don't think so that's going to happen. But what do you have to say about this? What do you have to say about this statement of his?
Well, I think that the sentiment of it is whoever can make it attractive to bring in the skilled talent and educated and innovative talent is going to win, right? And what we saw under some of that Trump 1.0, just going to call it that, make it simple, is that we were turning away great talent. And so where were they going? They were going maybe to Canada or Europe, or I don't know where they were going, but some of them were not they weren't feeling so comfortable to come to the US. And so what does that mean? Well, then those countries were going to get, and those companies were taking advantage of that opportunity. And then that can lead to, more innovation, more profits, more strength. And so, right. I mean, that is the problem with brain drains, when like there's political issues or there's just not a lot of options for those to move up. And so the countries that take advantage and look around and say, hey, let's make it easy for companies and individuals to come here and bring their awesomeness, for lack of a better word, to our country, they're the ones who are going to win. So I hope that we're not going to see that these next 4 years. What I will say is if we do unfortunately see that, then I will believe that we do have the pendulum swinging back and forth. And so it could just hopefully be a temporary loss. And then we rebuild with new leadership and new insights. But ultimately, I think that there's so many different aspects of immigration to this conversation, from a person who has no status to a person who's has some type of a quasi status, to someone who's coming from another country with education, to a legal permanent resident, to a naturalized citizen. And each one of those individuals is taking something away from a lot of this last week's news. And as to how really these things are going to impact them, I think it depends on where they are in the totem pole of their status. But for the most part, Trump was a business or is a business person, and he's surrounding himself by certain ones like Elon Musk and such. I think that there'll still be some reason in knowing that we need to not harm this process. There could be maybe some more potential restrictions, but I think for the most part, it's not going to be too greatly impacted. Unlike some of the other areas, like if you are not, you don't have a status, or you're trying to come in from the border.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering the question. Ruby, let me quickly move on to next viewer question. Gauravi is here, and Gauravi says, I have been working in the US on an H-1B for 3 years now. With these 2025 updates, what specific changes should I be worried about? Could these updates affect my ability to renew or transfer my visa? What do you have to say?
I think for the most part, if you already have your H-1B and you're secure with your job and things like that, I think you're going to be fine. I think what I normally would tell someone in that situation is, have you already talked about legal permanent residency, perm? Do you have a plan? Because remember, you're at the 6 years unless you've traveled and you can recapture some of that time, but you're going to be wanting to be having those conversations if you haven't already, because 3 years has gone by fast. What's your plan afterwards? And are you married? Can they get a visa? Can you yeah, what can you do? Though that's what I'd be more concerned about. The typical plain vanilla thing of what's your plan. I wouldn't be worried about these changes right now. There's not a lot of changes, honestly. There's not. It's really what Biden put in place, and we already knew about that coming in before this administration started.
Okay. Okay, so Gauravi, I hope you have got your answer. In case you're looking for more, continue posting your follow-ups in the comment section. And meanwhile, let me move to Rekha's question. So Rekha is also here. She says, I'm currently on OPT and planning to apply for an H1B through a consulting firm. With the 2025 updates, are there additional restrictions or red flags that USCIS might focus on for consulting or third-party placements? What do you have to say, Ruby?
It was for, oh, okay. I For the dual intent doctrine, I don't see any changes on that aspect. Oh, right. This is the different question here. I I haven't seen about the dual intent one question. I don't see any changes with dual intent. I think that's still there, and it's still a benefit. And like we said, it's sort of a gateway to legal permanent residency through the perm, but it doesn't have to be the only way. And there's other options that you could try to pursue. But let's see. So for the I think that there's just a lot more protection for the beneficiary. I haven't seen exactly something completely on point to answer this question about through a consulting firm, but I think that it's just they're just wanting to make sure that there's a lot more integrity and efficiency and protection of the beneficiary, and also making sure that employers are not gaming the system and things like that. They are going to be conducting inspections and imposing penalties for failure to comply, and proving that it's a bona fide position, a specialty occupation. But for the most part, I don't see anything that is to be of concern for this specific question.
Okay. Okay. So, Rekha, I hope you have got your answer. But in case you're looking for more, please continue posting your question, and we'll be taking that and asking it from Ruby. Let me move to Lokesh's question in the meanwhile. Lokesh says, in the context of H-1B visa programs, dual intent doctrine, how do the 2025 updates affect the ability of foreign professionals to pursue permanent residency or citizenship while maintaining the H-1B status? And what are the strategic considerations for balancing short-term and long-term immigration goals?
All right. Well, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
well, okay. So I don't see it. I don't see there was a change or a mention about the dual intent. Um, and so, the general traditional path that we usually see is the H-1B. Probably after 1 or 2 years, you start the perm process, which can take a couple of years depending on different factors and if there's an audit and things like that. And then if you have the I-140 approval, and then you can continue the H-1B extensions beyond those 6 years. And so that's generally what we see for individuals. But if for some reason that doesn't work, then there are ways to try to either recapture some more time, stay out of the country for 1 year to restart your H-1B clock. I don't see a lot of people do that, but it is something that exists. Maybe you have a spouse that can get on a different type of visa, and like an E2 or an L, and it can include you, and then you are able to work on as an E2 or an L2. Or maybe you're eligible for a national interest waiver, or an O or something along those lines. So I think that those things are still there. A lot of the implementation changes that were announced just a month or so ago are just like little tweaks, but it doesn't have a huge impact on the big picture of those short-term and long-term goals that you want to have. And usually when I have a consultation, we're talking like, okay, short term, midterm, and long term, plan A, B, and C, and the different permutations. And sometimes we're like the individual, the beneficiary's attorney, and we're like there to give ideas and suggestions, but the company is the one who's sponsoring has the attorney in house or what have you for the H-1Bs. So those are other potential options to just keep in mind so that you're thinking about the big picture. But I think you're going to be okay. So just as long as you're having a consult and you've already thought about these plans, because if you have your plan in place and then there's a little change in the policy or interpretation, then it should just be a little bit of like, okay, how do I refresh this and look at it in a new perspective? And it won't be it should be a substantial shift.
Okay. So Lokesh, I hope you have got your answer. Thank you so much for your question. Let me move to Ciara. Ciara has actually posted this question on Facebook, and she says, "Hello, I am Senegalese. I am H-1B seeker. I have a master degree in finance accountant with a non-profit area. Is it possible to get sponsor job in accountant or financial?"
So it can, but one of the things that's important is that the job description and the position requires that you have that degree. But there are a lot of private situations where H-1B sponsors accountants, and that's very common. But if the nonprofit, I think one of the things to note is proving that the nonprofit can pay that prevailing wage, has a role that can include a master's accounting professional on staff. Those are some of my little things of thinking a little bit, but that might be a little extra. But it is possible what you're asking for to be. And then if they qualify to be a CAP exempt, then you wouldn't even have to go through all this registration stuff we're talking about. But you have to look closely to that and have it evaluated to see if they are or not. Because if they are subject to the cap, then you have to go through it just like everybody else that we're talking about here.
Okay, so Ciara, I hope you have got your answer. Thank you so much for posting your question. If you have more, please continue posting your follow-ups. Meanwhile, Ruby, I also have a lot of questions from Facebook. I would like to share my screen and ask those questions because, those are some people, who post questions in the Facebook groups. So, yeah, I think it's already shared. So, okay. I would like to take them one by one. Before that, Ciara is actually back and she says, "Okay, thanks, and I have visa B1, B2."
Oh, okay. I was looking at that question. Okay, so for the B1, B2, you're usually only given 6 months of I-94 at a time. You can usually do a one maybe extension inside the country, but you have to realize that, okay, if you are subject to the cap, you wouldn't be eligible for to start being in the H-1B until October 1, and that's more than 6 months from now. And if you were to do a B2 extension, you might not know how much time, if it's approved or not. It could get a little risky if you're trying to do a change on top of a change. So I would just do a consultation. And if the nonprofit you're talking to doesn't have an attorney that they've ever worked with, then like we help in those situations, and that's a pretty common thing for us. Or if just in general, is if the company or the nonprofit that you're trying to work with has never sponsored anyone before. Then what often happens is they comes to us, they get an opinion, and then they like hook us up with their employer and say, hey, maybe this could be a good attorney for the employer. And this usually happens with more of like small operations that are haven't ever gone through the H-1B process before. So that's something that could happen, I'm suggesting, but also just it is possible to do what you're saying, but I'm a little worried about the timeline of it, especially if you are subject to the cap. You might need to just leave the country and make those connections, leave the country, and do the consular processing to finish it all up instead of a change of status, because we still a lot of unknowns. If you're subject to the cap, then you have to be chosen the registration and it has to get approved, right? So there's a lot of unknowns there.
Right. So, Ciara, you can also directly get in touch with Ruby. I would like to share her details. I would like to show the details over here, Ruby Powers. You can, for a detailed consultation, get in touch with her so she can help you because she also by now, she also knows your case. So you can directly get in touch with her for a detailed consultation. Give her a call on the number 713-589-2085. I would like to repeat the number, 713-589-2085. You can also email her. Her email ID is contact@rubypowerslaw.com. And you can also visit our website, which is www.rubypowerslaw.com. So please get in touch with her so that she can help you in a better way. And because of the time constraint, we won't be able to take all of your questions. But then you always have an option of getting in touch with the attorney directly. So here are her details. Get in touch with her. She says, okay, thanks. Thank you so much, Ciara. And now I would like to, again, Ruby, I would like to share the screen and show those Facebook questions to you, and would like to get an answer from you. Okay, so this question was actually posted 53 minutes back by an anonymous person who says, my lawyer by mistakenly sent I-485 to family-based AOS logbox instead of employment AOS logbox in Dallas. Now, starting February, they will only accept application on final action dates. I'm filing based on filing dates. It's been 3 weeks already. What will happen? Is there anything I can do? My checks haven't been cashed yet. What do you have to say, Ruby?
Well, that's a very technical question, but like in theory, if something is sent to the wrong place or it's not something's wrong, they usually reject it. And rejections can I've seen take 3 to maybe even 6 weeks sometimes. I've actually done a tour multiple times of the Dallas lockbox, and they open everything up, they look at the numbers, and they blah, blah, blah. But I would also check, okay, you don't have a receipt number. They didn't cash the checks, and it's been 3 weeks. And you probably already checked the FedEx or the mailing, and it wasn't, okay. I think I would probably give it another 1 to 2 weeks, and it'll probably be rejected and come back. I don't know off the top of my head if it'll get routed to the correct place. It probably won't. But in those cases, if something is sent to the wrong place, or something is deficient with it, then they reject it, and then it can take a little while, and then they'll just give you that rejection page, and then they'll just send that to you, and the whole packet. Now I get what your point is that you lost that opportunity because of the visa availability. There can sometimes be, with some great advocacy, being able to, if it's super worth it, there could maybe some advocacy to show when it was sent and trying to retain the priority date of when it was sent, but for the error. Um, but given the situation, I think you have to look at the whole picture and see if it might just be worth just waiting another month, for the visa to be current at the right time. I don't have that, what you're saying, memorized, where it is and how, if it's backlogged, retrogressed and everything off the top of my head. But these are some things to consider. But rejections usually can take about 4 to 6 weeks usually, and if they haven't cashed it in like at least 4 weeks, then it's probably going to get rejected and it's probably going to be sent back. So but then watching the visa bulletin and strategizing what you're going to do once you get it in your hands is another thing to have in mind.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for answering the question, Ruby. Let me quickly move to another question. I also have a question here from Jeremy. But Jeremy, we are going to take that in a while. Let me please complete these Facebook questions before. So this next viewer says, "Hi everyone, I'm currently on an H-1B visa and have received a jury duty summons. Am I eligible to serve as a juror, or is there an exemption for visa holders? What steps do I need to take to confirm my eligibility or respond appropriately? Any guidance would be appreciated."
Well, that is quite a fascinating question, because I think you have to be a U.S. citizen to be a juror. So, um, what I've seen be an issue is that they tie jury summons with driver's license. Did at any point you say you were a U.S. citizen when somewhere accidentally? Because as far as I know, you need to be a U.S. citizen to be on a jury. But I think that I don't know if that's a blanket across the country. I think it is, though. Actually, I've never been asked this question before. But let's see. I think that, yeah, I think you have to be a U.S. citizen to be on the jury. So now I'm wondering, how did you get that? But it might have been you might have checked a box somewhere on the driver's license. So look to see what might have triggered you getting that, because I've seen this happen a couple of times, where people accidentally registered to vote when they got their driver's license. So look to that, and then I'd say have a consultation just to see if we need to clean something up there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much again for answering the question. Let me quickly move to the next one. So the next one says, if we can zoom
And I
it in a
think we
bit.
might
Okay.
we might have to make this one of the last ones. Sorry for timing purposes, if that's okay. I've got so
Okay. So this person says, Indian citizen living in USA on H-1B. I recently renewed my Indian passport from USA. So while traveling to India, do I need to carry both the passports, new and old? Also, while coming back, will I-94 be marked to the new passport? But it doesn't have visa, as USA visa is an old passport. Will there be any issue? Also, I'm planning to go to India for a visit for a few weeks. Any suggestions on necessary documents needed to come back, even if I have stamped visa on old passport that I would be carrying?
usually this is just that annoying thing that happens because your visa's in the old passport, so it's best to have both of them. Um, Often, I believe they put the visa stamp in based off of where the visa is located, but ultimately, it would be good to eventually transition to having it in your new passport. But this is just sort of the what happens. What is We're going into some new territory, so I don't know if you have an attorney already, with your company, or you need to have a consultation just to make sure what the requirements are at the time. But for the most part, verifying your employment and having those up to date information is just, it's always safe to have. And we could be getting some updates as to what the answer of like returning or getting, that was one thing I forgot to mention that Biden did, is that they waived interviews, right? They waived interviews for people who previously had like a B2 or an H-1B, like in some select situations that they were exempt from that when they were at consular processing to come back. And I'm not sure if that's going to be continued or not, or if they're going to, make them all go do appointments and things like that. So I'd say have a consult in your particular situation. But yes, in general, when your visa's in one and you have it's expired, you're going to be showing both, and then eventually you'll be trying to phase out the old one. But you always want to keep a copy of your old one and keep scanned of it, because if your long game is to get your green card, you're like, having those are so awesome, because they shows entries, exits, validity of periods, and so much. So no, always make a copy of that and have it somewhere safe so you can use that in the future.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that. But Ruby, if you can please give us like 2 or 3 more minutes, I'll be quickly
Okay.
be taking 2 more questions. Yes,
Okay.
because they've been waiting for quite some time. So Jeremy is here and he says, "Hey there, we've been living in New York City from 2019 August, and we are using Fregumen and they have told my wife and I from September 2024, we are just waiting for our green card. My wife is on L1 and I on L2. So any clarity on these types of visas and green card?"
Okay. Well, was it the L1A or the L1B? And is it based off of perm, or is it, you didn't say what your nationality was either for visa availability. So I wish I could help give, I don't know. There's so many different factors, right? So what was the basis of the green card? What are your nationalities? What's the visa wait time? And how much time do you have on the L's? And is it L1A or L1B? Because the L1A has 7 years and L1B has 5. But so those are things I need to know to help get, and what's the exact question, because I think I don't know what the question is, but or there's a follow-up and clarity of these types of visas, British and Indian. Okay, well, who's British and who's in, okay, well, so let's just say in general, but I mean, you can have a consult just for you, even though there's Bragaman is the attorney for the company, but just to understand some of these things. Okay. The L1, there's the L1A and the L1B. The L1A, like I said, has 7 years, L1B for 5 years. You have some of the same rules as H-1B. You can recapture time, and there's dual intent. So it's really nice. If you're the L1B, you're usually going to do the perm. And if the L1A, there's another way, and it's a little bit, okay, so you're British. My wife is L2, and she's Indian. Okay. So, but you didn't say whether or not you're L1A or L1B. Maybe you're L1A. I don't know. But anyway, if you're L1A, then the green card process, especially if you're British, is a lot faster if the company is sponsoring you. And so I don't know what the original question mentioned, something about September. They have told my wife that we were just waiting for our green cards. So I think if you're saying that they filed the green cards, the 485, then you would have those receipts and you're just waiting for the processing. And you can also go to USCIS website under processing times to see what those processing times are. But if you're saying like they haven't even filed the I-140, okay, the wife is British and she's an L1A. Okay, well then this is a faster process because of that. But I don't know exactly if you're asking me like they filed the 485s in September and you're waiting for the green cards to come in the mail. Check to see what receipts are there. You can check the receipt on the processing times and for the case status, and then that can give you a better guidance. But if the wife is British and she's the okay, did they premium process the I-140? So the wife is an L1A. She's British. She's the primary. The I-40 was completed. Well, it's likely the company sponsored, and so I think that you can check for those processing times. And I don't know if the I-140 and the 45 were filed concurrently or not. But anyway, these are some of the things I need to know to help give you a little bit more guidance. But it looks like
So
you're
Jeremy, maybe you should directly get in touch with Ruby. How about you directly get in touch with Ruby?
that
Yes,
would
the
probably be
details.
best.
Yeah. Um, uh, the details are displayed here on screen. Give her a call on the number, send her an email, visit our website, get in touch with her. And yes, I'm going to read out those details in the end. But before I do that, I would also like to quickly take one more question before I let you go, Ruby. It's from Hiren. And Hiren says, due to technical issue, my employer submitted two applications for the same employee due to this USCIS and sent RFE for H-1B, then how can we handle this? What do you have to say?
Um, you're welcome, Jeremy. So due to my employer submitted two applications for the same employee due to USCIS sent RFP for H-1B, and then how can we handle this? They sent two separate H-1Bs completely. What was the RFP asking for? I need to know a little more as to are you talking about registrations or are you talking about H-1B complete packets? Like they just sent the same one twice. And then was one of them supposed to be like for you potentially? And there are sometimes you can try to solve problems with liaisons, like with the American Immigration Lawyers Association, we have liaisons. But I really, unfortunately, need a little more about this question to sort of figure out how to troubleshoot it, and how big of an issue it is, and knowing what the RFE is for would be helpful. So, you know, if you there's been, I mean, I don't want to say second guess your attorney, but there is a benefit to having a second opinion occasionally, just like you would with a doctor, right? And if they're not, completely answering your questions, or you just want to have another opinion, there's no harm in that. You just pay for a consultation fee, you get another opinion, and maybe you don't even make any changes, but it gives you a little bit more peace of mind and to maybe think outside the box of what could be a way. These are sort of the situations I call, like, when the train gets off the track and you're like, oh, this is, how do we get it back on track? And sometimes it could be a human error, the firm, or it could be a human error or some type of error at USCIS, and it can cause unnecessary stress but when people crowdsource other attorneys, and even those attorneys are talking to other attorneys, they can, and have practiced for a while, they can find out ways to troubleshoot things. I know that I've had some funky things in the past, whether it was because of ours or USCIS, and the more I practice, the more I go to CLEs and talk to other attorneys, the more I'm able to figure these types of things out. So I know that doesn't exactly answer you, but I do need a little more to help answer that question. Um, but I think is that our last one for today? We went a little over.
It is. It is. Yeah. So Hiren, maybe you can also get in touch with with your detailed question. Maybe write your question in detail with each and every aspect regarding to your case, and send it to Ruby or give her a call on the number. You can directly get in touch with her by calling her on the number 713-589-2085. You can also email her. Her email ID is contact@rubypowerslaw.com. You can also visit her website, which is www.rubypowerslaw.com. And we also had one more question by Vivek, and he wanted to know about EB3 visa from Nepal. But Vivek, we are going to do one more episode on EB3 EB3 visa. So you stay tuned on this space. Make sure you subscribe to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. We are going to give out more, we are going to come up with more webinars and more updates regarding EB3 visa. But for now, that's it. So thank you so much, Ruby, for being here. Thank you so much for, giving us this time, and your answers were insightful, detailed. So thank you so much for everything.
Oh, well, my pleasure. Thank you, everyone. I hope I could give you a little bit closer in the right direction. And nothing takes the place of just having a good old private, consultation. But, it is good to see what's out there and learn. And it's great that you have this forum. So thank you again for inviting me, and I hope we can find some other ways to collaborate in the future.
Of course, we'll be more than happy to do it. And yes, I'll get in touch with you again for maybe another episode. And whenever you have time, please let me know. And we would love to do another webinar with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for being here, for posting all your interesting questions. And yes, if you were able to get your answers, great. And if you weren't, make sure that you get in touch with Ruby so that you can get your answers in detail. But for now, I'll have to take your leave. Thank you so much again for posting your questions and watching the webinar. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, like the video, share with your friends and family who are looking out for answers to these questions. And like I said, for now, I'll have to take your leave. I'll be seeing you all very, very soon in another webinar. But for now, take care. I'm Rajni Bharara signing off. See you.